Okay, next topic is alternative costing. In F2 level, there is no calculation in this chapter. Even though there might be calculation in your book, those calculations are only for explanation. So here in F2 level, you just need to understand the concept. When you go to F5 level, there is a separate chapter for each of these individual topics in this chapter. So alternative costing means a cost that can be used instead of the costing systems that we already know. We had the absorption costing, the cost plus pricing, looking at the cost per unit. So we have alternative costs of these. So one of the alternative costs is ABC, or activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is alternative of, and remember these are modern costs, modern alternatives. So activity-based costing is alternative of absorption costing. Absorption costing, remember, is also called volume-based costing. So the problem with absorption costing is that we saw in absorption costing, mostly we used unit basis or labor hour basis or machine hour basis to divide overheads. Conventionally, overheads was insignificant cost of the product. It was insignificant proportion. So even though if we absorbed overheads, even though if it was not very accurate, we didn't care because the amount itself was not significant. But nowadays, in the modern world, the overheads has become significant proportion of the cost, even more than 70% of the cost. So if we are not accurate in dividing cost that is 70%, so obviously the cost of our product and the valuation of our product will not be relevant. So activity-based costing is the alternative of absorption costing, and it recognizes the cost structure of the modern manufacturing environment, and it recognizes the complexity of the production process. So instead of using only one unit or labor hour or machine hours, it uses many measures. Remember, in absorption costing, we had cost allocation, then we had cost apportionment, and then we had reapportionment, and then we had absorption, and then we had under or absorption. We have steps in activity-based costing as well. The first thing we look at is we identify major activities of the organization. In absorption costing, we identify departments. Here we identify activity. Activity can be anything. There could be many activities within a department. So we are not looking at a department as one thing. We are looking at a department as many things. So each of the activity that is done in a department would be separately divided. So activity is, for example, ordering, delivering, scheduling. It is an activity. It doesn't matter if one department performs many activities. Under absorption costing, one department would use one thing. It would be labor, machine, or unit. But here, one department can have many things. So first we identify the activities, and then we identify the cost drivers. Cost driver is anything that increases the cost of those activities. Like our activities is ordering, and then cost driver is orders. The more the orders is placed, the more will be the cost of orders. Like scheduling is activity, cost driver is schedules. The more the schedules, the production runs, the more will be the cost of activity. And machining, for example, is an activity. The more machine hours, the more will be the cost of machining. And then we find the cost relating to those activities. We, in absorption costing, we allocated an apportioned cost to the department. Here we allocate an apportioned cost to the activity. So all the cost that is relating to ordering will be put in ordering activity. All the costs relating to the scheduling will be put in scheduling activity. And then there's another step as well they haven't mentioned here. We take the cost pool and we divide it by total cost drivers. For example, we have 1,000 cost of ordering activity, and there are 1,000 orders. So we take 1,000 costs and divide it by 1,000 orders. It will give us the cost per order. Just like we did in absorption costing, we took the total cost of a department and divided by total activity in that department. So here we are doing the same thing, but instead of department, we are looking at the cost pool of the activity, dividing by that activity. And then we charge the cost to the unit based on the use of the activity. Let's say the cost per order was $1, and in one order there are 10 units. That $1 will be divided by 10 units. It will give us cost per unit, which will be 10 cents. So we find the activities, what is it that we are doing, and then cost drivers, what is it that increases and decreases the cost of those activities. And then we take all the costs and we relate it to activity. We call it cost pool. And then we take the cost pool divided by cost drivers, which gives us cost per driver. And then whatever is the usage per unit, that much will be charged to the units. So there are benefits of activity-based costing as well. There are disadvantages of activity costs as well. We already saw the disadvantages of absorption costing. You should see that in absorption costing chapter. The benefit of activity-based costing is, one thing, it will give you an accurate cost because we are looking at the cause of the activity, and when we look at the cause of the activity, then cost charging will be more accurate. Disadvantages: collecting data for activity-based costing is difficult usually than absorption costing. Moving forward, there are other advantages and disadvantages as well. You can look here. Next, we have life cycle costing. Life cycle costing is alternative of looking at the profitability of a product per unit basis or year basis. So sometimes what happens is an organization launches a product and they want to they want the product to make profit right away, and they are not patient. They don't have long-termism. So products go through multiple stages. So sometimes it doesn't make profit initially, but you don't have to worry about the profit as long as it gives you profit in the long term. So life cycle costing says you shouldn't look at the profitability of a product per unit or in the first year. You should look at the profit over its entire life. A good example of this I will give you is, let's say there's a tree. So you shouldn't think of making profit from the tree when you initially put the seed in the ground, because for some time you have to water it, you have to give fertilizer, and after some time it is going to give you fruit. So you shouldn't worry about profit initially. You should look at the profitability over its entire life that is going to give you fruits. So life cycle costing is the same idea. It says you shouldn't look at the profitability of a product per unit or per unit basis. You should look at the profitability of a product over its entire life. There are different stages that a product goes through. One stage is the development, which is not shown here, but development stage is when a product is under development, tests are undertaking. For example, a mobile phone, so you're thinking about the screen resolution, you're thinking about the camera. So it is under development, the features you are deciding. So in development stage, obviously, you will not be making any profit. So everything that you will be doing is spending money. Then you have introduction stage. Introduction stage is when a product is released into the market. Some product has very low introduction stage, some products have very lengthy introduction stage. Some product, when they are released into the market, they are bought right away, like Apple's phones, Samsung phones. But some products, they go through a period of time until they are recognized by the public. But what happens in introduction stage, you are spending a lot of money on marketing, on customer service, and because you don't have economy of scale, you don't have as much profit usually. Remember, I'm talking about the usual thing. Otherwise, some product have very short introduction stage. Economy of scale means you are not selling in large quantity. Because you're not selling in large quantity, because of that, the profit that you're making is not significant. Then comes the growth stage. Growth stage is when people recognize the product, they start buying the product. The economy of scale increases. Because of economy of scale, you start making profits. New competitors come into the market. They realize that there's a product in which they can make profit. You open branches, you receive feedback from your customers. And then there is maturity stage. Maturity stage is when it reaches the highest level, the highest potential that it can be. And at maturity stage, you have the highest economy of scale. You don't spend a lot of money on advertisement because you've already spent a lot of money on advertisement, and you're making a lot of profit mainly because of the economy of scale. There are other details as well, but I will not give those details at F2 level. I've already done life cycle costing at F5 level. If you want to look at that video, you can look at that. So at maturity stage, we are making the highest profit. So after that, there is decline, which means what comes up must come down. So people have bought maximum. So slowly, customers will leave. They will go to other products. And sometimes what happens is, at this stage, your competitors also go. So their customers come to you. And then eventually, you realize that there isn't any profit that you will be making in the product, so you withdraw from the market. So we should look at the profit and the cost and everything that we spend on this entire life cycle of the product. If that life cycle is 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever period is. So we look at the cost, we look at the profit that we are going to make from this life cycle. If the revenue is more than the cost, so then we will launch the product. If the revenue is less than the cost that we estimate, then we don't launch the product. That is why some ideas that you might have seen on Facebook or anywhere else in the internet, they're never released into the market, because it is believed that the revenue that is going to be earned is not going to be more than the profit. So what you can do to make sure that the profitability is increased in over this entire life cycle. The important thing to do is to think of them in advance. Once you have released the product into the market, any effort that you make into the product will not have a huge effect. So better thing is to think about these things in advance. So some things to do to increase the returns over the life cycle is design cost out of the product, which means make the design simpler. Don't make it very complicated. Make it cheaper. Remember, design out cost means reducing the cost of a product, but at the same time not affecting the quality. So only non-value added costs should be removed. Minimize time to the market, which means release market quickly to the market, especially if it is a technological thing. If you take a lot of time to release the product into the market, it might become obsolete, so your return will not be as much. Or maybe a competitor realizes that a company is releasing something and they do it before you, like what Microsoft did with Apple. I believe in the 80s, Apple was releasing computer before Apple released it. Microsoft released it, because of which Apple had huge losses. Minimize break-even time, which means Earn your money back as much as possible. The sooner you receive your money, the better it is, the less risky it is. Maximize length of the lifespan. Increase the life cycle of the product. How can you increase the life cycle of the product? During the life, you can make a little bit changes to the product. For example, you can offer discounts, minimize product proliferation. I don't know what that means. So service also has life cycle costing. So then there are comparisons. I've already explained that. So the benefit of life cycle costing is you take early decision. You're looking at the long term. You're not looking at the short term. Your decision is more accurate because you're looking at the cost and revenue of the entire life. Next is target costing. Target costing is the alternative of cost plus pricing. Traditionally, what organizations did, they produced a product and they added a profit to it to find the selling price. Traditionally, power was with supplier. Power wasn't with customers, so there weren't many suppliers, so whatever the supplier wanted, customers would pay for it. But in the modern world, because there are many competitors, suppliers cannot charge whatever price that they want. So looking at the modern world, whenever we are deciding the price of a product, we look at the market as well. So what happens in cost plus pricing, we look at the cost of a product, we find profit, and that gives us selling price. That is cost plus pricing. Now, target costing is the exact opposite of that. Target costing says, first find the selling price, see whether the price that you are selling the product in the market, whether people are willing to pay for that or not. So from that price, deduct a profit and then find the cost. So for example, if we look at the cost plus pricing, which is the traditional, I have a product that I produce at $100. I want to earn $40 profit. I add $40 profit, so the selling price is $140. This is cost plus pricing. In target costing, once I develop the product, I have to see in the market what is the price that the customers are willing to pay. How can I do that? I will look at the price that the competitors are charging. If my product is a little bit superior than that, maybe I will charge a little bit higher. If my product is inferior, I will charge a little bit lower. Let's say I do market survey and I believe that the price that people are willing to pay would be $120. Remember that $120 will not change. This is the whole thing about target costing. The target price doesn't change. So $120 is the price at which I will be selling the product, but I will be making $30 profit. So $30 deducted from the 120 becomes $90. That gives us the target cost. Now it doesn't stop here. Target cost is the cost that the cost at which I should make the product. And then we have estimated cost. When I look at the product and the features, the labor and everything, I believe I will be able to make the product at $100. If I make it at $100, should I increase the selling price to $130 to make $30 profit? No, this is wrong. If you give that answer in exam, especially in F5, your answer would be wrong. So 120 cannot change. So if the estimated cost of the product is $100, we calculate something called target cost gap, which is the difference between estimated cost and actual cost, which is $100 minus $90 becomes $10. $10 is the target cost gap, which simply means that the product costs me $10 more than it should cost me. So what should we do is try to reduce the gap, try to decrease this. How can we reduce the cost? One thing is by making the design simple. Don't add unnecessary things. Remove non-value-added features. Like in the past, many laptops had touchscreen, but people were not using touchscreen as much, so company reduced the touchscreen. Or CD-ROMs. Nowadays, you don't have CD-ROMs in your laptop. So if you remove the non-value-added features, the features that customers don't use, the cost would be reduced. Use standard components, not bespoke components. Bespoke components are those components that are specifically made on request. So when you make something specifically on request, obviously it will cost more. So use something that is available in the market. Use cheaper labor. If something can be done by the lower skill labor, you don't need expert for that. So cost plus pricing is finding the cost, adding profit, finding the selling price. That's it. Target costing, finding, developing the product, finding the selling price, minusing profit from it to find the target cost, and then looking at estimated cost, then finding the difference, which becomes cost gap, and then trying to reduce that gap. So these steps are explained here. Next is total quality management, TQM. Total quality management is an idea that you shouldn't believe that your product has achieved the highest level of quality that is possible, and there is no any way that the quality can be improved. The same thing as with learning. They say if you believe that you have learned everything, then your learning stops. So the same way, an organization should not believe that they have achieved the highest level of quality and they are superior, the quality cannot be improved. So they should always think that there can be gaps and we should always try to improve. If you don't do that, what will happen? Your competitors will go ahead, like what happened to the Nokia. They believed that their products was the superior and they didn't have to improve anything, and they like disappeared, and one time they were leading. So this is the idea behind total quality management. So total quality management also believes that there should be zero defects. There is no quality defect that is acceptable. Traditionally, organizations believe that, okay, if 5% of the units are rejected, it's okay. More than 5% is not okay. But TQM believes that there should be zero products. So even if you don't achieve that the first time, you should have a goal of a zero defect, and you should try to achieve it. Emphasize on the quality of the product, not quantity. If you're not able to produce a certain quantity at the right quality, then you should reduce the quantity. Don't just emphasize on quantity. Remember, traditional method says that there are some variances. TQM says variance is wrong way. For example, if you look at labor efficiency, in labor efficiency, you believe if labor produces more units in less time, it is a good thing. But in total quality management, if the quality of the product is not good, then it is not a good thing. And total quality management says all people should be responsible for quality, not specific thing. The person buying the product, person making the product, person selling the product, person delivering the product. So all of them are responsible for quality. Total quality management says there should be continual improvement, as I explained. There are some other things as well which are not explained here. I will explain two things. One is internal failure cost, another is external failure cost. Internal failure cost are those costs in quality management that are incurred within organization before a product is delivered to the customer. If anything happens about the quality, that is called internal failure cost. And when the product is delivered to the customer and after that there is any defect, that is external failure cost. And then we have cost of conformance and cost of non-conformance. Cost of conformance is the cost that we incurred to try to improve the quality of the product before any defect happens, or before the product is delivered to the customer. Cost of non-conformance is when a product is delivered to the customer and after that you are spending money. For example, the goods are returned, so it will be reduced of revenue, or if you repair it, you will be spending money on it. So cost of conformance, non-conformance, and then internal failure cost and external failure cost. So these topics are explained in details in a 5-level. If you want to know about it in more details, I've already done F5, so you can look at those lectures. So this is it for alternative costing.